To celebrate through the What She Said, W Hotels brings conversations celebrating inclusivity, individuality, and honesty, tackling the issues of today, some of which we're already talking about, and some of which, sadly, we just don't think enough about. But above all, conversations that offer a place to navigate the challenges and triumphs of work, love, play, and everything in between. So today we are turning up the volume on these conversations, and we're going to hope that you leave here feeling empowered. You can share what you've heard and inspire action. Today's What She Said speaker event is going to celebrate the inspirational stories of some incredibly bold women discussing mental health challenges, how they've overcome stereotypes, broken down stereotypes, and removed stigmas, so they have all succeeded in their various fields. I'm truly honored to welcome this spectacular panel today. So we have, you've changed order, so you've totally thrown my script, but I'm okay, we're fine. Co-founder of Mental Health AE, Latifa bin Haider.
Hi, everyone.
Next to her, we have para-athlete and motivational speaker, Zainab Al-Ikhabi.
Hello, everyone.
And next to Zainab, the first female Emirati director and producer, Naila Al-Khaja.
Hi, everyone.
Lovely. Last but not least, our beautiful first curvy model of the Middle East and North Africa, Amini Asabi.
Hi, everyone.
We're so pleased to have you all here, and of course to have you all here as well. Now, as we know, there's always a different subject with regards to the What She Said events. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health. So I'm naturally going to come to you, first of all, Latifa. Bold question, no pressure. What is mental health?
So I want to put it simply, so we don't go too much into it. It's it's simply our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It includes, or it affects how we think, feel, and act. If you want a definition from the World Health Organization, it's a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with normal life stresses, is able to, work productively and fruitfully, and can give back to the community.
Okay. So why is it then, again, I'm sticking with you, but I would really love to hear everybody's opinion on this. Why is it such a taboo in the Middle East? Why can't we talk about it?
Well, to start off, it's fear of the unknown, right? We as humans have a natural fear of things that we don't understand or cannot see. And a lot of people seem to think that if someone has a mental health problem, then this person is crazy. It's an either or. You're either normal or you're crazy, but it's a spectrum. But given the situation, a lot of people are afraid to speak up and, reach out for help. So that is one. Another is from the many people I've spoken to when I co-founded Mental Health AE, specifically in the region, a lot of people link mental health to religion or spirituality. And a lot of the stories went like, I went up to my mom and I was like, I'm going through something. And she said, well, you're not praying enough, or you're not wearing your hijab correctly. That's why, of course, you're going to have depression. Excuse me, ma'am, did you just diagnose me based on my hijab? How does that make sense? But then, again, we need to remember that they're trying to help us to the best of their abilities and the best of their knowledge, right? So what works for them doesn't necessarily work for you, but them not understanding does not invalidate how you feel. Right? It's your job to take care of yourself and reach out and find the environment or the friend that is understanding and someone you can talk to. And 1 in 4 people suffer from mental health disorder at some point in their life, and 66% of those do not seek help simply due to the stigma. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy in itself.
Yeah.
Amini, you were going to say something as well.
Yeah, I was personally going to add is also we live in such a judgmental society where personally it's more of like, I would rather, how mothers would personally think, it's some of them, I don't want people to know that my son or my daughter has depression or is sad or whatsoever, so I want to hide it. So it's more of like, oh, you're not allowed to speak about it, not because she doesn't want to help or she doesn't want to face it, but because she doesn't want people to know.
It's so interesting,
Or she doesn't want
isn't it?
people to find out about it, where it's more of like aib in a way.
Okay.
Where it's like, I don't want anyone to know that we're going through this. This is family matter. This should stay between the four walls in our house. And no one should know about this. So it's more of like, you suffer in silence. As long as society like doesn't know.
Zainab, you were going to...
I would love to add something. Also, there is that kind of perception that if you admit any kind of mental issue, it's a weakness.
Right.
So, so many families also, they don't like to disclose because they don't want to perceive that there's something wrong with the family and maybe there is a kind of weakness in this person. Also, whether it's on work environment, you're afraid to disclose that. Maybe you're going to be judged on your assessment, like your work and so on. So you prefer to keep it to yourself. And when I was a student in the pharmacy college, I had a chance to work in a psychiatric hospital, and I know that's severe cases. But it was a good chance, like grade 3 weeks, I learned a lot about mental health and psychology and the perceptions and how would people, even when they come to the pharmacy, they try as much as possible to hide their identity, like their face or look down. And they're just like, I was like shaken, you know, as a student to see similar kind of reactions. I'm like, what is it? Why you're just like, you just don't want me to know your identity, and though I can see your name and full details, but you're just like giving them indication they would just run.
Yeah.
It's not, I know some people, they're not scared to say it, but because of the society and the taboo that you're speaking about, which is just really
Exactly.
I think the nuances are lost because whenever you talk about, like in my culture specifically, with my family to be specific, I told anyone I want to go see a psychiatrist, they would immediately say, they would say, you're not crazy. They just bracket it in one zone. So there are a lot of different shades in between, and you don't have to be crazy. Sometimes you just want to talk to someone. So true story, this is before I was, so I don't want to link it to my husband, that's why. So before I was married, I would have these secret visits to the hair salon. So I called it the hair salon. And I would go every Sunday to the hair salon at 3 p.m. And my driver, you know, being the little cocky driver he is, he's like, Madam, the building doesn't have a hair salon. So I'm like, what are you trying? He's like, he thought I had a secret guy in there. And I'm like, so basically I was so embarrassed to tell my staff, including my driver, that I was actually going to see a psychiatrist. I was going there, speak to a shrink, and express a very a dark episode of my life when I was a child that I couldn't overcome, you know, and that was so life-changing. It was so helpful, and I even went ahead and made a little film about it. And I'll be very honest, it's about pedophilia, a very heavy topic, but people don't talk about this at all. And it's important because you overcome these challenges once you open up, and you find a space that's safe, that's open to healing without judgment. And I think now, being comfortable and being at the age of almost 44, you know, I can wear a neon light that says, I don't care, I'm going to a psychiatrist. Where back then, I'll be so worried about what everybody else would say.
Of course.
So this whole culture of being brave and not worrying is also amplified through social media and talks like these. So thank you very much.
No, exactly that, because if it wasn't for each of you individually doing what you're doing and using your voice, then I think it helps all people. And it's interesting because it's not just in Middle East culture as well. You can probably tell I'm English. And I remember when someone suggested for me to go and see a therapist, I was like, what? I'm British, I don't do that. I keep my feelings locked in and I don't tell anyone. No, see a therapist. And I remember when I first started speaking to the therapist, where have you been my whole life, you know? And it's not necessarily, I've always been a real advocate of it in terms of, it's not necessarily about going to see a therapist or a counsellor to fix something. It is just that general well-being and mental health that we're touching on today. Latifa, sticking with you, I know that we've spoken about, obviously, Mental Health AE that you co-founded. Can you share a little bit more experience, a little bit more information on the experiences you've had of how you're supporting women in the UAE with their mental health issues?
Yeah, of course. If I can just go a little bit, I just want to
Please.
tangent off a little and explain, just briefly that there are different, how mental health problems can come up or take place, right? So it depends. Sometimes it's a neurological or a biological reason, right? So there's something that's not balanced, and then you need assistance to normalize. In another scenario, it's not an either or per se. They're external variables, right? So it's the environment you live in, parents, work, or relationships. So after co-founding Mental Health AE, there were many, many people that we spoke to. I can't even count them at this point. And a lot of them were people that I've known for a long time. And as soon as they heard that I co-founded Mental Health AE, they were like, oh, okay, so she's not judgmental. I can go talk to her about this. So they would come up and they'd be like, okay, listen, I've been struggling with this for like 4 years, and it's just gotten worse over time. I don't even know where to begin. So thankfully, by then, we had already compiled information and resources. We try to make it also UAE specific, so that I can help her. I'd be like, okay, so can you read up on this, do this and that. Personally, I don't come from this background. I have a business background, but we try to put our skills to use to help, again, raise awareness. So I was like, you can go here, read a little bit on that, and here's a list of clinics or specialists in the UAE that you can visit. So by then, by the time she, finally understood the situation, it wasn't like, oh, I don't know what's going on. She was going in, finally understanding and fully understanding what's going on, and okay, now I have the courage to go speak to someone. And another story was, and it really stuck with me, was one of our wellness circles. It was in person, sometime, I think, January or February. We sat at a desert whenever we can, and if the weather is good outside, we try to make sure it's spacious and airy. So a lot of people would come, and one of the attendees was like, I've been coming to these wellness circles for a while, and I finally gained the courage to come up and ask for help. So we connected her with a specialist who was really able to help her this time, and she was like, this is the first time that I'm able to take a full deep breath in 2 years with, after not finding joy in anything whatsoever.
Wow.
And, I'm just gonna say I cried so much that night. And I was reminded once again why we do what we do. But, these are just 2 stories.
I think they're absolutely amazing. Ladies, let's give her a round of applause. I think some of the work that you're doing is wonderful. More people like you, that's for sure. So I'll stick with you, but definitely, ladies, please get involved in this, because I think it's an interesting one. And it's a bit of a bold question as well. What are the challenges that affect women specifically, do you think, that kind of really have profound impacts on our mental health? Obviously, Amini's already touched on the society and social media, and we'll come to you for that.
Yeah, so I'm just going back to what Amini mentioned. There's still a difference between how men and women are seen, especially here. So even though the woman has the freedom to, go about with her social activities, a lot of parents worry that, if my daughter is seen visiting a mental health professional, she's not going to get any marriage proposals because she's going to be crazy. And I was like,
don't make me laugh at that.
I'm
It's
serious.
embarrassing.
There's so many stories I heard. They're heartbreaking. My friend comes up and she's like, I told my mom I need to see a therapist, and it's pricey. I can't afford it. That's another problem also, that a lot of the women don't really have an independent source of income. So visiting a specialist is on the expensive side. So sometimes it's not an option.
Okay.
So my friend came up to me and she was like, I asked my mom, to just increase my allowance a little so I can visit a therapist. And she was like, listen to me, I don't want to hear you say this word again, because, my friend is planning on asking for your hand in marriage for her son. So later on, deal with it on your own, or do it in secret, but don't talk about this at all outside these 4 walls.
I mean,
But that's very common.
yeah,
it's very,
all
very
3
common.
of you literally on the stage, and I'm sure in the audience as well. Amini, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I've heard so many similar
I'm sure,
stories
yeah.
also. But, something considered to my story is that my parents were like that in the beginning, especially the fact that I come from a political family. So it's not more of like, it's like, oh, your uncle is a politician. You can't do this.
Right.
Like the image of the family. And I'm just like, I don't care though. And I'm known to be a crazy child. Like I was the craziest child of the family. And it's just like, so if I feel like when I was a kid and I was getting bullied in school, I would go back home and tell my parents, I'm getting bullied at school. My dad would be like, bullied? And he'd be like, you're supposed to be a wolf. You don't get bullied.
Ooh, nice.
Like you come from a family of strong people.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna tell me you're crying? You're gonna tell, if we cry in my house, you're weak.
Oh, gosh.
Like you are not allowed to cry in my house.
Really?
Yeah, until now.
I don't know if is that a good thing? I mean, I think you
Well,
should be
you
allowed
know
to cry, but I
what?
know what you're saying. He's trying to instill strength in you.
It's a good and a bad thing because it's so funny that when I feel like, for example, like I'm in a relationship and we're breaking up, I'm supposed to cry and feel sad. And I text my friend, I'm not able to cry. Like I'm trying to let it out. Like it doesn't want to go out. Because I was taught my entire life not to cry. So now I physically, until today, I emotionally and physically cannot cry. I'm not able to cry.
Challenge accepted. What about, you know, we are in the new generation, right, of Middle East, well, certainly of generation full stop, but female generation. What are we doing about that? Like,
Well, I mean, going back a few steps, again, mental health and women specifically. I mean, I can only talk about my domain because that's my experience. And you know, when you're also in a domain where 91% of published work are by men, and you are cornered in the 9%, it's literally a torture chamber.
that's in the film industry?
Yeah.
91%
Yeah.
male.
That published work,
Yeah.
to be heard. And it's a very, very lonely space. It's a brutal, ruthless space. So anyone who's like, oh, you're in the film industry, it's glamorous, it's this. I'm like, yeah, but that's just, you know, when you go to a film festival. What about the other, you know, 300 plus days in the year? That's the side that's really not glamorous, that's brutal. I mean, the good news is that a lot of the crew members in Dubai, the men, are supportive, but it just takes a few. It just takes a few of them to crush you in this industry. And I won't forget, there was this piece I did for Expo 2020, and it wasn't commercial. It was a national film. It was about the orchestra. So we had 190 musicians in the middle of the desert, and I had to direct all. So it was a monumental, it was a big task. And I remember clearly walking down, heading towards my DP, my director of photography, who takes the guy who's responsible for the visuals. And the guy behind me said, oh, so do you think her assistant did her storyboard, or and they were speaking in a different language, and he said, yeah, you think she wrote the shot list? You know, Emirati girl, you think she wrote the shot list? And then he said, princess, but this was all in a different language. Now, they don't know I speak 5. So, and I was sad because it's literally below, you know, it's crew, they're like the gaffers and the electricians, which usually they're really nice people. So I just turned around, and in his language I said, yeah, at least I'm not a gaffer. Thank you. Have a good day. And I walked away. Usually I wouldn't do that. It's really nasty. I wouldn't encourage such behavior. But I was so burned. I couldn't believe the comments. And that takes a mental toll. I mean, that's one incident. I've been through a lot. And it's incredible when they find out that a woman is directing something. The level of confidence just drops here with clients. And you can see it in their eyes that they start like moving up and down. And this is how I got this is a true story. This is how I got my first client, because there's zero confidence in what we do as women. I'm not saying this is the case right now, but this is how I started.
Yeah.
I had to speak to my English professor and ask him to join me to the meeting and, you know, get a briefcase with him, pay him money, pay him per hour for his time, obviously, just to be there, because he was a male, Caucasian, 45-year-old that looked confident. I did all the talking. I asked him to nod, and it worked. We closed our first deal. And I promise you that's because of the image. That's because of the fact that I was there with that guy.
Yeah.
It gave them confidence. And you start to learn through maneuvering the language of the world. And you have to be creative about it, women. You have to be, solution oriented. It's one thing to cry victim, but it's another thing to go and find the crack in the wall and how you can literally fill it up with your own ideas and find people and situations. It's okay. If Steve or Martin will help your cause, do it. Use them. If I'm going to get a helicopter for free because I'm a woman, they feel bad for me, fine, you're an idiot. Give me the copter. I won't pay 20,000. Thank you very much. I just saved some line items here. But this is what I mean. We need to find our creative space before our mental space gets hijacked.
And staying on that then, like how have you sort of broken down this or attempted to break down this gender discrimination within this industry?
This is why I'm 43, almost 40, and I haven't had my feature film done. And everyone's like, why? I mean, you've done films. BBC just bought The Shadow, my latest short. In the film world, it's okay. You would say it's the BBC, but it's not, like Wild Bunch or one of the top tiers agencies that, sorry, that's a bad comparison, or another big channel, but it's a short, and short films have short lives, and long films have longevity to them. And I finally, and not losing patience, and I can tell you, I mean, tears and like drawing blood from a stone, and people think, oh, she's a Marathi, she's rich. That's absolutely BS. I live a life like an expat. I work hard. My husband's an expat. I get zero financing from my parents.
Even your mom doesn't live in the country.
That stopped decades ago. So no, I mean, I will not adhere to people removing that credit from me. That's absolutely not right. So I broke my glass ceiling. I was telling the ladies when I brokered a deal with Rocket Science's agency in the UK by selling a riveting true life story to them from 1921 called The Alexandria Killings. Wrote the premise of it and was able to give it to them. And then I don't know if you want to call it good luck, but someone up there just said, let's give this little girl a break. And Terry George, Oscar winner from Hotel Rwanda, is now attached to direct it, and I'm EP on it as executive producer.
Yes!
But again, people see that and they're like, oh wow, but it took years of hard work. And I'm not even, I haven't even begun, because with my feature film. But it is a stressful road, and I like it. I love filming. I'm crazy about the domain. I just really hope there'll be more women storytellers. And again, this brilliant mind that I met today who's who understands investment, and I was 22, I'm like, what? The way she talks is absolutely mind-blowing. And I want to say, like, women can also invest in film, and women can invest in many things. And I really believe in the power of the pen. When you're the one making those decisions, signing the checks, even making small investments, I really believe there's a weird, saying that says it's nicer to cry in a Mercedes than in a, on a skateboard. I think it helps mental health. Let's be honest about it. Moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Zainab, I'm going to come to you now, if that's okay. You've been very quiet there. So
Hi.
I'm going to put you on the spot, even though Zainab's done a TED Talk, everyone, so she's like far more experienced than the rest of us. Zainab, it goes without saying, you're here because you are this motivational speaker, and you speak openly, and you are a role model for all women, young women in the Middle East. But as we can see, you are an amputee. Lost your leg in Iraq at 6, nearly 7. And I know that we've spoken a lot about this. Zainab's been on my podcast this week, so we've had a right gossip already. But just tell us, I guess first and foremost, how does that even compute? Because at 6 years old, you're not thinking about mental health, right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about that. Please tell the story.
Yes, so the story is very long, so I'll try to make it very brief for you guys. I was born in 1990, and I come from Iraq. A country has been through so many wars. And in 1997, or in 1990, we moved to our house. And throughout the years, we kept whatever, thing that you find could be useful, you just put it aside. So we found something when we moved to the house in 1990. We thought it's a metal thing that was left by one of the workers when they were fixing the house. And we kept it, and we used it throughout the years, but nothing happened. So in our imagination, it's just a tool. And in 1997, I wanted to fix my handlebar for my bicycle because my dad stepped over the handlebar while leaving the house. So I'm like, Dad, please fix it for me. I need to ride my bicycle. And we grabbed the toolbox, and that metal fitted perfectly in the handlebar. And with the hammer, we gave it the right friction, And that's when we realized it was actually a bomb. So it wasn't just a metal, it was something left over from the war of 1990, and it never exploded because, you know, it didn't have the right ignition when it felt. And we gave it the right ignition. So it was a very traumatic incident. We are a total family of 6 members. In the accident was my dad, myself, and my youngest sister. And my dad was fixing the bicycle close to his body. So the first thing that he lost or was smashed into pieces was his hand. And he needed a lot of surgeries. Luckily, nothing happened to his face, but he really needed a lot of surgeries for his body to be fixed and back to life. Myself, my leg was badly injured, and I was thrown away by the explosion. And one of the doctors was very generous, and he did a medical mistake beside the overall trauma. So he kept a cast over my leg, and that was in the second hospital, and a gangrene developed. That was the wrong timing for the cast. So the third hospital, they had to take the final decision, like, this needs to be amputated. And my dad was, of course, in the ICU. He had no idea that his little girl is going to be amputated. So my mom and my uncles had to take the final decision, and I was amputated above the knee. I also almost lost the function of my fingers, but luckily the last doctor in the last hospital was good enough, and he fixed my hand. My younger sister had minor injuries compared to me and my dad. Only a bit of her fingers was torn, and she needed some cosmetic surgeries for a big scar on the thigh and rehabilitation for her knee. Long story short, so to wake up in the hospital after a sudden call, like, hey, you need to be operated, like, they didn't tell me, of course. And my opinion was pointless. I was just 7 years old. Regardless, I was a very, very stubborn child. So to wake up the next day, having nurses coming in to fix the stitches and to find myself limbless, it was a slap on my face. I still remember. I was very mad. I was not accepting to eat, you know, as a rejection, like, why didn't you ask me? And I was super mad at my uncle, who was there forcing me to eat. It was a life-changing incident for the whole family, and until now I am always thinking and reflecting, like, I don't know how my mom was able to absorb all of that. We came back home, half of the family still in rehabilitation phase. My eldest sister is still, like, trying to understand, like, oh, her siblings lost things, and my dad as well, and my brother. So it was too much things happening at the same time, and eventually I had to grow up much faster than my age. It was not easy to understand why I have to use a crutch. I hated to use a crutch until they convinced me that I can hit people with it. That was the key. And then my prosthesis, it was a disaster to know that a Barbie leg is not really a Barbie leg. It was something that's totally different, but there was no other way to tell a child that how you're gonna have a prosthesis other than, like, you're gonna have a Barbie leg. I was through a lot of mental trauma, and no matter what I was going through, I can't imagine how big it was for my dad, who felt guilty for years, and my mom, and my sisters and brother would just adapt, you know. I had to really grow faster than my age. Like, no matter how things were challenging, like, to understand I now can run while jumping, or ride the bicycle with one leg now, or do any other activity in a different way. But seeing my mom absorb it, I had to understand that I need to be stronger. I didn't understand what is mental health. I didn't understand what is stress, or crying, or panicking, or, you know, asking for your mom. You're in school, just your leg is falling apart because of an incident. But her strength and dad's resilience was always a reminder that, oh, I have a responsibility, though I was a child, that I need to suck it in, stand up, and do whatever it takes to just be here. And that was actually a lot of work behind the scenes, because it's not a one-day journey. It's really continuous until today, and it will keep on going. And the more I'm getting, like, older and having greater responsibilities, the more I am reflecting on my parents and on the overall journey. Like, wow, I was really strong with that incident. But I think sometimes you're just blessed with a spontaneous reaction that makes you able to control your mental health and to just stand up and go to work, do whatever it takes. So I really learned a lot
Yeah.
in my life about mental health in general and just to simply be stronger. And being here today is like my whole journey, I would say, as a person, as an individual, also through social media, the things that I'm blessed that I have achieved was not only something that's for myself, but I would consider it a therapy for my dad to get him out of the feelings that he had to live with for so long because of the fact that, oh, an amputee, a girl is growing up in the Middle East, hello, she's gonna be definitely out, you know? So the most like common sentence I have heard while growing up is that I want you to be completely independent. I don't want you not to even, you know, ask your brother for help or support one day. Like I want you to kick the ass of the society. Like I don't want them to break you down because unfortunately that's the mindset toward people like whom are going through mental health issues or having special needs or disabilities and extra to that a female.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so that was my story briefly, ladies
No,
and gentlemen.
absolutely. Round of applause, I think. I mean, it's incredible. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing. I know that you speak openly about it anyway, but it's still tough to hear and for you to go through. But touching on kind of similar to what Amini was saying as well, with regards to, again, society and social media and all these stigmas, with the whole disability taboo as well, like why is that even more so here? And in terms of like it being such a life-changing moment, and you mentioned specifically as a woman.
Having any disability, like regardless it's an amputation or something else, it makes you feel like you're not eligible or you're not fit for something, a certain task, or you're just like you are just simply not perfect for any task. So this is actually, I had no awareness about the social or perspective about people with disabilities until I got into college, because I was just going to school, my friends and home, and that's it. But when I got into college and I started to explain to people, like, my leg was covered, by the way, until end of 2013. Like, it was ideally cosmetic part, and I hated that. Sorry. And I wanted just to show up and to create awareness on daily basis while walking, doing activities, doing whatever it is, not only on social media, but on daily perspective. And to motivate people who are maybe having an amputation or anything else, when they see me, like, please come to the society. Don't just stay home, because that's not okay, you know? So university actually made me realize that, oops, there is no awareness. And if I would tell someone I'm using a prosthesis, that's gonna be like, oh, so what is that? Or what is amputation? So I was somehow fed up with it, and I started being a motivational speaker or just a speaker, you know, having such kind of engagement to share a story, share knowledge, share behind the scenes, because we always, you know, build barriers between us, like these walls, but even thicker, and we don't share. And that's a huge perspective also when it comes to mental health. Like we don't speak about it, which makes it as a taboo. So speaking about a topic and making it more visual, more obvious to people, it makes it so much easier. And that's why I decided to show up on social media.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to ask this across the board, but I know that when we spoke, you were saying about when you grew up, and I'm sure the rest of the panel would be the same. You didn't have a role model in the Middle East. You were looking for someone. I know ultimately now, I'm sure you're extremely humble, but I'll say it on your behalf, is you are a role model now, and an incredible role model to so many, not just with disabilities or special needs, as you say. So what were you looking for this role model? What was this person?
There are so many great people like with amputation or like any kind of disability in the Paralympics, and I love them and they're doing great. But for me to grow up just as a young girl, I needed other role models. It's not always limited to sports. I want something related to education, daily life, fashion, fun. I didn't find that. And whenever I asked, it's always like, go to a disabled club for sports. I had to search the internet to figure out what things I can do. And unfortunately, the main role models I found are in the Western countries, and I'm so grateful for them. We never met. They probably don't know about my existence, but I've learned so much from them. So having role models is something important, especially if you're younger and you're growing. But that doesn't mean if you're like way old, you shouldn't have a role model. It's always, we are learning from each other. So it's more than great to have a role model, and it's not something that if you're an egoistic person, you shouldn't admit. Like, we are here to learn from each other. We all have a story. I'm sure you all have amazing stories, and I would love to hear it and learn from you. So I missed that while growing up. And showing up, sharing my story here and there in different places, because I also would encourage people to show up, to
do the
create
same.
role models for the younger generation. I would love to see a Zainab now, 7 years old, had through her own destiny somewhere, but now she wouldn't have my feeling that I had to go through when I was a
course.
child.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same rule. Like, now you guys are so thankful for, I myself, I'm so thankful for the women who struggled so much to make us have, like, you know, some kind of accessibilities now across the world related to women empowerment rules. So that thing we shouldn't forget. It's a path through generations.
Yeah, absolutely. Naila, I'm going to come to you. Oh, go on. You were going to say something anyway.
No,
You
I was
you
going to
shoot
say
guns as
something
well.
related to what she said earlier,
Yeah.
and maybe it's it's not off topic, it's actually on topic, but it's a different road. And I really believe when we grow up, we don't have a choice to be around the people we're with, and I think that really builds our character from a very young age. So when she said she wasn't allowed to, for instance, cry, I wasn't allowed to, not to up you or anything, but this was my reality, and we weren't allowed to cough, for instance.
Cough?
Yes.
Why?
We had to have pinpoint silence in the house. So we had to run to the room, close the door, cough, and come out again.
No screaming into a pillow
So
in
which
your
is very
house.
interesting because I can't handle loud music. Because of that, like she can't handle crying. And it
Yeah.
comes from a very fear instilling, like instilled environment where, you know, certain things, crying is they'll hang you, like you can't. Crying is out of the question, but coughing is also out of the question. Wearing perfume was out of the question. So there's so many of these different rules and restrictions, and I had to find my own kind of beautiful way to look at life positively despite the madness. And I think this is why I think it's important. If you grow up in a household where you have no control around the people around you, how they behave, of course it will impact your mental health. But as we become adults and you know, individuals and people, yes, it's harder for some women to get out of a negative space, but I really deeply believe who we surround ourselves with has a crazy big mental impact on our like mental health. And this is why I'm saying this, and you know, I've had 2 husbands. I've been very lucky. Both are very, very good. Thank God they're both not here. Anyway, but I've been very lucky. They're both excellent in the sense that, you know, it's just due to time. I mean, I married the first one. This is another topic. I'm not getting into it, but I married the first one because I was denied an education, and the reason was because I wasn't married. It's like a loop. So he's like, well, if you get married, then you can go study abroad with a husband because I'm a woman.
You couldn't.
I couldn't
go abroad.
Yeah,
and
I couldn't go
study.
abroad by myself as a
single woman.
as a single woman, but I was able to do it as a married woman. So I had 3 months to hunt a husband down in Dubai. Good luck. This was before the shitty software Tinder, right?
Question very quickly. What about the other way? What if you were a man? Did you have to be married to go?
No, that's fine. That's
course,
completely
of course
fine.
that's fine.
But I understand. Look, it was a very different
yeah.
era. And again, it's not a law. It's not, to be very clear, it's not like a law of the city or the country. It's just tribal, like it's family to family. So in my family, we didn't have women who drove cars. My auntie was the first one who broke that rule, and I was the first one to break the rule by. So this guy came and said, look, I'll marry you if that's what it takes. You really want to go study film, I'll do it for you. So that was my first husband. It was a transaction, and it was one of the best ones in my life because it impacted the rest of my life. I was a funny guy, lovely guy. We had the most amicable divorce. Everyone in Dubai court was so surprised and confused. They're like, you guys are so beautiful together. What are you doing? Like, this is not right. So we had to go home, practice fighting, come back again. And it was, I mean, that by itself was funny. Anyway, so we had the most amicable separation, and then, you know, and then when the real marriage happened, that took, 14 years of finding the real, for real love.
I thought you were going to say it took 14 years to get divorced.
No, not
Oh,
until I was
right,
26
sorry.
when that happened. I married my current husband at 38, so
Okay.
you do the math, I can't do the math. But it was exhausting to find someone right. But I'm so glad I waited, and it really is because of mental health. Because if you're in the wrong environment, my husband is everything that my childhood wasn't. Everything. Not scary, very comfortable. Of course, we have arguments, we're a couple, but he is extremely accommodating, very, very sweet, very kind, a wonderful father. I mean, if I always have this rule that if you're 75, 80% okay in a relationship, that's a lottery. You go, you grab it. You don't let it go. I was actually the one stalking him, by the way. It worked. It's like, you won't leave me alone. I'm like, no, you know, you are a poker face. People are scared of you, but you're a really good person.
But interesting that you found him and you looked, I guess, for him everything, as you said, you didn't have growing up.
Yeah, and
The
I had to
opposite
go
of your-
and face the family. You know, I don't want to point out members and say that I am going to marry someone not from the UAE.
Yeah. How did
And-
that go down?
Oh my, you don't want to know, because that itself, that 1 hour, did all the mental damage you can imagine.
Yeah.
The guts, I had to like pretend I had a lion on my right and a tiger on my left to pretend. It was
Yeah.
like so scary. And then he's like, oh, wait a minute, so he's Egyptian or Lebanese, so he's not even from the UAE. And I'm like, well, a little bit further. And you can see, like, the face went down, the silence was so deadly, and like, my blood rushed up my face, and I'm like, how do I say that he's from Switzerland and his name is Christian? Like, my heart was palpitating, you know, and it was just so scary.
Couldn't be any whiter if he
And
tried,
then
could
you know,
he?
me being me, and I told him the truth. I said, well, he converted, like, immediately. Like, that was my
Yeah,
first word.
right.
It's like, oh, so he's not an Arab, is he? I'm like, no. So there was a 3-month campaign going on with family, convincing my dad, of course, to say yes. And it was hard. I said, look, I am almost 39, that's back then, and if you want me to have a chance of having a family, and you keep calling me dinosaur for a reason, so dinosaur needs to get married now. Say yes.
Brilliant. I love it.
So I did, and I have twins, and I'm extremely happy. So you
I
create
love
your own,
it. Yeah,
you
round
know,
of applause.
in this life, it's fine to be depressed, I guess, every now and then, but it's good to pick yourself and find your happiness. So that can be anything to you, whatever makes you happy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I see Alex stalking at the side. How long have we got, Alex? 5 minutes? I'm sure everyone's all right with a bit more. Okay, we're going to wrap up. We are going to wrap up, and then we are going to open up the floor for Q&A. We've still got time for Q&A, haven't we? Yeah, we've always got time for Q&A. It's fine. Listen, I wanted to ask a very quick question. I'm going to go one last question across everybody. Basically, advice for women dealing with mental health issues right now, whatever they may be. How can they establish a sense of contentment, if you like? Not that I'm a TikToker, I'm far too old to be a TikToker, but I'll go first. In terms of, people say to me, quick backstory of mine, I lost my mother and father quite close together, and that's the reason I started my podcast, because I speak quite openly about grief, is people say to me, how do you do it? How do you get up every day, and you're always so chirpy and smiley, and you talk a lot? I just say, do you know what? I genuinely try to wake up and decide if I'm going to have a good day. Does that make sense?
Affirmations.
Yeah, and it's not like a carpe diem and seize every day. And sometimes, I mean, really, when the alarm goes off, it's the worst day ever. But I just try and make a decision. Okay, look, I'm just going to get on with life now and try and be happy. And it was actually a story, I'm going to point her out, my old boss there, Lucy Darboe, I worked for Lucy, and she's a mentor of mine still. And I was actually working in the office, and the accountant was like, how are you happy all the time? And I was like, because if I'm not, I'll probably be crying under your desk. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things, just try and be happy. That's mine. So Latifa, what would you say and impart on these women?
I'm gonna take the cheesy route and say that your priority should always be you. It's not being selfish again. What's the word you used?
Individuality. Individualistic.
And self-love, right? So for me, I found contentment and peace and purpose in supporting others. I found my strength also from my family, from receiving support and giving it. So hence starting Mental Health AE and my other startup about women empowerment as well. So it's important for you to, first of all, have a work-life balance and to take care of yourself first, always. So it can be as simple as if you are not feeling like going out with your friends on the weekend, just say no. Literally just say no. And if they ask why, you go like, I'm not feeling it. I just want to spend time with myself today, cry over some movie, and just go to bed. None of your business. Just do that. Just say no. And it can go from this to, I'm going through something, I need to find the right support group, and, I need to see someone, a therapist or a specialist, right? I just want you to remember that you're not alone. The first step is just reaching out.
Nice. Thank you very much, Latifa. Zainab, your
Tifa
advice?
almost said all my thoughts. Like I was like, okay, she said the self-care. First of all, like I'll admit, and then like she said the self-care. I'm like, okay, I lost this one point some more. And I'm like, okay, you're not alone. Then she said it, not, you're not. Okay, but I would emphasize honestly about self-care, self-love. This is a huge priority in my life. Like I would always try to zoom out, try to invest in my hobbies, fun activities, travel alone. Like I really like traveling alone. Like I would just don't even subscribe to my internet. Wherever there is a Wi-Fi, I will be connected. When there is no Wi-Fi, I'm fine unless you get a police phone call, God forbid. So please, self-love is really a priority, and we totally tend to forget it because our lives here, especially like in Dubai, it's so busy. It's overtaking work, families, responsibilities. So you reach out like on the weekend, you think, oh, let's just have fun with the friends, but sometimes it's a no, as Latifa said. And put an investment in your self-love, journey. It will always be like so renewable for you. You will find greater outcome. You will be more relaxed, less tense. Everything would go smoother. So really self-love. This is
It's beautiful.
my go-to, like
Thank
at
you very
least
much.
twice a month,
Yeah,
minimum.
of course. Go on, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I want to mention something I forgot. A activity I like to call it that's very, very helpful is at the end of the day, just journal 3 things that you're grateful for today. Even if it's, my goodness, I had a very yummy mac chicken today. Anything.
I was going to say food as well. Always
Anything.
grateful.
And if you start doing that every day, you're gonna notice that during your day afterwards, like throughout the week or the month, you're gonna start looking for things to be grateful for throughout the day, just to be journaling them later in the evening.
Nice.
And that's kind of like a first step into trying to go into the more positive mentality, or the affirmations every morning. Like
Yeah.
I decided that today I'm just gonna be a good day for me.
Yeah. I like it. So the 3 things. Nyla.
For me, it's identifying what's upsetting you. It can be something very basic. It could be something very deep-rooted. And I think it's important to identify it, to solve it, or try to solve it, or work around it, I would say. Also, context. Context is very important when you look at your life and then you look at other people. I'm not saying comparison should be the key thing, but to me, it's like, again, going back to your point, the blessings that we have in our life, we need to also focus on these and not just on the negatives. But then, is the negative something that you can actually change? How far can you change it? Whether it's someone around your space that's really not good for you, or whether it's something that you keep repeating because it's a bad habit, and you go and seek help. Everything starts here, and this is home. And when you start changing, things around you change. And my stepmom, when I was very young, she said, "If you can't change them, change them." And I didn't understand it till now.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, if you can't change them, physically change them. Like find another group of people that will adore you. So that worked for me always.
I like it. Finally, Amini, what have you got for us that's not gun related?
No, it's not. Not this
Okay.
time. Next time. For me, it's, how I started loving myself? I started obsessing on myself.
Okay.
So what I started to do is I changed. So, how, you guys all know how in the room it's 4 walls, right? So I broke down one of my walls and I put it into a mirror.
Okay.
So it's a huge mirror. I wake up, wherever angle in the room I am, I see myself. And that's where I realized I can't run away from myself. And I can't run away from how I look, how I talk, how I speak, how I react. And because for me, it was more physical than mental. It was accepting how physically I look. And because when your entire life they tell you you're ugly, you believe it. When I think I look hot a lot. personally.
Damn right. We agree. Yeah.
Thank you. And you know what? When someone comes to you and tells you, "Hey, you're beautiful," maybe you'll believe it. Maybe you'll not. Maybe you say they're lying. They're just being nice. But when you tell yourself you're beautiful, you can't lie to yourself. You can lie to people, but you can't lie to yourself. So that's why I put that mirror up. I put that mirror up so every morning, as soon as I wake up, when I look like absolute trash, I go to myself and I go like, "Damn, you look hot." And I promise you I do that. And I talk to myself a lot. I swear, I do it. I go to the mirror and I'm just like, you look good.
Yeah.
You look hot. I'm just like, okay. And I look like trash.
I mean,
PJs, like this.
that's a
Look.
panel. That's a whole other panel because why women have to look at a picture of themselves or in the mirror and constantly critique.
But let me tell you
themselves,
something.
yeah.
It took me over a year to be able to do that.
Really?
Because the first time I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, hey, you're pretty, I cried. Because I was lying to myself.
No, right.
I didn't think it.
Yeah.
I didn't think it, I didn't feel it, I didn't believe it. So I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna try it again. Second time. Hey, you're pretty. Nah, you're ugly. Get out of my face. It took me a year exactly to be like, you're pretty and believing it.
Yeah.
Really believing it between you and yourself. And you're just like, okay, today I look good. I like it. And then that's when you start, when something mentally is disturbing you, you're like, oh, he pissed me off. Who the fuck does he think he
Yeah,
is?
yeah.
I'm a mini Sabi. No one pisses me off.
Yeah.
I don't care. And I leave the mirror. And when I look at, I promise you tonight, if you go and you can look at yourself in the mirror, but really look at your own eyes in the mirror, I have respect for you. Because not everyone can do it.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at your own reflection
yeah.
and your own soul.
And love yourself.
And
as well.
that's why my dad thinks I'm crazy for having a mirror as a wall. But I love it because that mirror actually saved me. And that mirror saved my mental health for me.
That's amazing.
Because I'm talking to that mirror.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and the mirror is not going to judge me. It's not going to insult me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's a reflection of who I am.
yeah.
It's
Literally.
not
Yeah.
it's not a, I love my mirror more than a therapist. And this is why I stopped seeing a therapist, which is probably not the right thing to do, but you know, everything I do is upside down. So, and I feel like when I feel weak, I go to that mirror and I'm just like, hey, so today I feel like absolute trash. This happened, this happened, this happened. And then it's like a double personality. And then I go like, oh, you know what? Tomorrow's going to be a better day.
Done.
You look good. Doesn't matter.
That's it.
And
I see everyone's going to be writing down like book in mirror.
Yes, do the
Tomorrow.
mirror.
Get the
It actually
handyman
works.
round.
But you have to talk to yourself every day and you will feel like Beyonce leaving that room.
I love it. Oh, I wish I
Seriously.
did. Yeah, I love it. That amazing. Absolutely amazing. Ladies, thank you so much. I am going to have to wrap up now. I'm being flagged left, right, and centre. We are, obviously, there's lovely food going around from Sobi. Please hang around. We're going to have cocktails and more drinks. And obviously, the ladies will be available to chat to as well. Thank you so much for coming. Once again, I'm Katie Overy. And thank you to Latifa, Zainab, Naila, and Amini. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.